Hello，大家好啊，我係 Dummy，I'm Dummy. Welcome to the Art of Hong Kong by Dummy.
Let's talk a little bit about unit classifiers. Unit classifiers can be very confusing for English speakers because normally speaking for, say, one apple, a person, there's no unit classifier. And the easiest way to understand it is that in Cantonese, unit classifiers can be understood just like the unit classifiers for English uncountable nouns. For example, a piece of paper. A piece of, that is the unit classifier. 一張紙, a piece of paper. A cup of water. 一杯水, and you see a piece of something and a cup of something, those are classifiers in English. In Cantonese, we have unit classifiers, not just for uncountable nouns, but all nouns. So remember, just like in English for uncountable nouns, you have to add in these unit classifiers for every single noun in Cantonese. Unit classifiers are often seen after a number. When the number is omitted, it's usually either referring to just one object or a bunch of objects. And the reason behind it is because in Cantonese, nouns are not specified to singular or plural, and you have to add in numbers and unit classifiers to determine the quantity that you're talking about. Okay, let's go right into it. Unit classifiers can be divided into several categories. We have the individual classifiers measuring just several objects or animated objects. For example, 一個人, a person, 一個人. Two apples, 兩個蘋果, 兩個蘋果. Three dogs, 三隻狗, 三隻狗. Now, these are all individual unit classifiers. And we also have unit classifiers for a pair of things or a group of items or animated and non-animated objects as well. For example, a pair of earrings, 一對耳環, 一對耳環. A pair of chopsticks, 一雙筷子, 一雙筷子. A group of students, 一班學生, 一班學生. Now, another category is unit classifiers with uncountable or unfixed amounts of objects. We'll use the word D as the classifier. And D can be understood in English as the word some or the or even those. For example, sometime, 一啲時間, 一啲時間. Or the people or some people, 啲人, 啲人. The apples, some apples, 啲蘋果, 啲蘋果. Good, and those are for, classifiers for unfixed amounts. We also have unit classifiers for measuring, such as time or distances. For example, 一米, 1 meter. 1 minute, 一分鐘, 一分鐘. And finally, we do have unit classifiers for actions or motions as well. For example, 玩一次, play once, 玩一次, do it once, 做一下, 做一下. But today we'll only focus on the individual classifiers for general objects and items. Now let's begin with the individual classifiers. The most common one you'll probably see is 個, and 個 can be seen as the all-embracing unit classifier. You can basically pair 個 with any object. It's not wrong entirely. Most of the objects or items can be paired with the classifier 個. For example, 一個人, a person, 一個人. Two apples, 兩個蘋果, 兩個蘋果. A country, 一個國家, 一個國家. However, there are some objects that come with specific classifiers. For example, 一個學校, a school, the proper unit classifier is 一間學校, 一間學校. 間 is the classifiers for usually houses or rooms or like schools or centers, etc., etc. But if you were to say 一個學校, a school, it's not wrong either. So same goes with the example 一個電視, TV, 一個電視, the proper unit classifier is 一部電視. But again, if you were to say 一個電視, it's not wrong either. Therefore, 個 can be seen as the all-embracing unit classifier if you have to say it in a possessive form. For example, my TV, you'll say 我個電視, omitting the number 1, 一, because it's implied. Or 我嗰個電視, also my TV. Or 我嗰一個電視, my one TV. Now, your country, 你個國家, 你個國家, or 你嗰個國家, 你嗰個國家. or 你嗰一個國家。你嗰一個國家。But for more than one item, when you still want to include the quantity, like his or her 2 apples, say for example, you will have to say 佢嗰兩個蘋果。佢嗰兩個蘋果。The number is always stuck between the 2 goals, 嗰個 those 2 goals. Just like when you will say his 1 apple, 佢嗰一個蘋果 exactly the same. 佢嗰兩個蘋果 his 2 or her 2 apples. Good. So for describing small little things, you can use the classifier 粒。For example, for 1 single grain of rice is 一粒米。一粒米。And a bean is 一粒豆。一粒豆。A single grape is 一粒提子。一粒提子。Now in possessive form, you can say for our single grain of rice, 我哋粒米。我哋粒米。Or 我哋嗰粒米。我哋嗰粒米。Or 我哋嗰一粒米。我哋嗰一粒米。And for you guys, 1 bean, you would say 你哋粒豆。你哋粒豆。Or 你哋嗰粒豆。你哋嗰粒豆。Or 你哋嗰一粒豆。你哋嗰一粒豆。Very good. And for their 1 single grape, you can say 佢哋粒提子。佢哋粒提子。Or 佢哋嗰粒提子。佢哋嗰粒提子。Or 佢哋嗰一粒提子。So the classifier 粒 is for small little things, say for example buttons and like marbles or things like that, really tiny objects. And if you want to say a whole bunch of grapes instead of just 1 single grape, you will say 一抽提子。一抽提子。The classifier 抽 refers to items where you need to grip onto something to carry the item. Say for example, for grapes, you have to grab onto the stem in order to pull the bunch of grapes up and carry the grapes around. So therefore, the classifier for a bunch of grapes will be 抽。And for possessives, you would say for my bunch of grapes, 我抽提子。我抽提子。Or 我嗰抽提子。我嗰抽提子。Or 我嗰一抽提子。我嗰一抽提子。For a bunch of grapes. And on the other hand, if you want to describe long, rod-like, stick-like objects, usually hard in texture, you will use the unit classifier 支instead. For example, a pen 一支筆。一支筆。Your pen 你支筆。你支筆。Or 你嗰支筆。你嗰支筆。Or 你嗰一支筆。你嗰一支筆。For a flower 一枝花。一枝花。His or her flower 佢枝花。佢枝花。Or 佢嗰枝花。佢嗰枝花。Or 佢嗰一枝花。佢嗰一枝花。Or 3 tree branches or twigs 三支樹枝。三支樹枝。And then if you wanted to say 3 branches of ours, you can say 我哋嗰三支樹枝。我哋嗰三支樹枝。However, if you want to describe long strings or stick-like objects, and they don't have to be rigid, you can use the unit classifier 條。For example, a single strand of hair 一條頭髮。一條頭髮。My single strand of hair 我條頭髮。我條頭髮。Or 我嗰條頭髮。我嗰條頭髮。Or 我嗰一條頭髮。我嗰一條頭髮。For a rope 一條繩。一條繩。And as for your, as in plural more than one person, your rope 你哋條繩。你哋條繩。Or 你哋嗰條繩。你哋嗰條繩。Or 你哋嗰一條繩。你哋嗰一條繩。Now for 4 bananas, you can say 4條香蕉。4條香蕉。Or 4條蕉。4條蕉。And as for their 4 bananas, 佢哋嗰4條蕉。Or 佢哋嗰4條香蕉。 With bananas, 香蕉 or 蕉, you can also choose to use the classifier 隻.隻is often used for animals, living organisms, as well as distinguishing the singular from a pair or multiples. For animals, for example, 三隻狗, 3 dogs. And then for my 3 dogs, you can say 我嗰3隻狗, 我嗰3隻狗. And for a chicken, 一隻雞, your chicken, 你隻雞, or 你嗰隻雞, or 你嗰一隻雞. And for fruit, in the example of a banana, you can say instead of 一條蕉, you can say 一隻香蕉, or 一隻蕉 for just a banana. And for his or her banana, you can say 佢隻香蕉, or 佢嗰隻香蕉, or 佢嗰一隻香蕉. Now, when you just want to point to a single one of the items out of a pair or a multiple, you can use 隻 as well. For example, one single earring, 一隻耳環, his or her one earring, 佢隻耳環, or 佢嗰隻耳環, or 佢嗰一隻耳環. And for one single chopstick, 一隻筷子, their one chopstick, 佢哋隻筷子, or 佢哋嗰隻筷子, or 佢哋嗰一隻筷子. As for vegetables or plants or flowers, you can use the classifier 棵. For example, a plant with flowers, 一棵花. A bunch of vegetables, 一棵菜. A bunch of grass, 一棵草. Good. Now, if you want to refer to things that are sheets-like, for example, a piece of paper, for example, or like bed sheets, or even the bed, you can use the classifier 張. For example, a piece of paper, 一張紙. Give me a piece of paper. 俾張紙我, or 俾一張紙我. A bed, 一張床. You guys bed, 你哋張床, or 你哋嗰張床, or 你哋嗰一張床. If you're referring to things that are also sheet-like, wide in size, flat, but more rigid in texture, like a piece of land or a piece of carpet or a piece of pork chop, you can use the classifier 塊. For example, a piece of land, 一塊地. A piece of carpet or floor mat, 一塊地氈. A piece of pork chop, 一塊豬扒. A slice of bread, 一塊麵包. You can also use 件 with objects that are cubic or objects with some sort of shape, but not with a specific shape necessarily. It's quite ambiguous. For example, a toy, 一件玩具, because a toy has some sort of a shape to it. A sushi, 一件壽司, and sushi is sort of like a longish shape. For a piece of furniture, 一件家私. For a piece of garbage or rubbish, 一件垃圾. Quite vague, but just remember, unless the item has a specific classifier, 件 is used for miscellaneous shaped items or objects. And there's another classifier that's a little more casual and easier to use than 件. The classifier would be 舊. 舊is simpler because it applies to most shaped items, unlike 件, you don't use it with clothes at all because clothes don't really have a particular concrete shape. And 舊is also quite all-encompassing when it comes to shaped items, usually rounded or 3D objects that are not flat nor long, nor should it be tiny, not people, nor objects, nor buildings, nor clothes. And for example, an apple, 一嚿蘋果，一嚿蘋果。A toy, 一嚿玩具，一嚿玩具。A sushi, 一嚿壽司，一嚿壽司。A piece of furniture, 一嚿家私，一嚿家私。A piece of garbage or rubbish, 一嚿垃圾，一嚿垃圾。A loaf of bread, 一嚿麵包，一嚿麵包。
That's it for today. Next time we will talk about unit classifiers for clothing as well as unit classifiers that are specific. Also, classifiers for multiple or a group or a pair, as well as referring to uncountable or unfixed amounts. Talk to you next time. That's it for today. If you like what I do, like and subscribe to my channel. Comment below to tell me what you want me to talk about. See you next time at The Art of Hong Kongese by a Dummy.